Hello, my dear brothers and sisters, and my dear friends. This is your pastor, Yati. You are the beloved. Yes, you are. I'm going to talk about that Jesus at the center of our life. If you were to ask me point blank, what does it mean to you to live spiritually? I would have to reply, living with Jesus at the center. When I look back over the last 30 years of my life, I can say that, for me, the person of Jesus has come to be more and more important. Specifically, this means that what matters increasingly is getting to know Jesus and living in solidarity with Him. Everything we know about Jesus indicates that He was concerned with only one thing: to do the will of His Father. Nothing in the Gospels is as impressive as Jesus' single-minded obedience to His Father. From His first recorded words in the temple, "Did you not know that I must be busy with my Father's affairs?" Luke chapter 2 verse 49. To His last words on the cross, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Luke 23 verse 46. Jesus' only concern was to do the will of His Father. He says, the Son can do nothing by Himself. He can do only what He sees the Father's doing. John 5 verse 19. Jesus is the obedient one. The center of His life is this obedient relationship with the Father. This may be hard for us to understand because the word obedience has so many negative connotations in our society. It makes us think of authority figures who impose their wills against our desires. It makes us remember unhappy childhood, events or hard tasks performed under threats and punishment. But none of this applies to Jesus' obedience. His obedience means a total fearless listening to His loving Father. Between the Father and the Son, there is only love. And living a spiritual life requires a change of heart, a conversion. Such a conversion may be marked by a sudden inner change, or it can take place through a long, quiet process of transformation. But it always involves an inner experience of oneness. We realize that we are in the center, and that from there all that is and all that takes place can be seen and understood as part of the mystery of God's life with us. Our conflicts and pain, our tasks and promises, our families and friends, our activities and projects, our hopes and aspirations no longer appear to us a fatiguing variety of things that we can barely keep together, but rather as affirmations and revelations of the new life of the Spirit in us. All these other things which so occupied and preoccupied us now come as gifts or challenges that strengthened and deepened the new life that we have discovered. This does not mean that the spiritual life makes things easier or takes our struggles and pains away. The lives of Jesus' disciples clearly show that suffering does not diminish because of conversion. Sometimes it becomes more intense, but our attention is no longer directed to the more or less. What matters is to listen attentively to the Spirit and to go obediently where we are being led, whether to a joyful or a painful place. Poverty, pain, struggle, anguish, agony, and even inner darkness may continue to be part of our experience. They may even be God's way of purifying us. But life is no longer boring, resentful, depressing, or lonely, because we have come to know that everything that happens is part of our way to the Father. And God sent Jesus to make free persons of us. He has chosen compassion as the way to freedom. And that is a great deal more radical than you might at first imagine. It means that God wanted to liberate us, not by removing suffering from us, but by sharing it with us. Jesus is God who suffers with us, and over time the word sympathizing has become a somewhat feeble way of expressing the reality of suffering with someone. Nowadays, when someone says, "I have sympathy for you," it has a rather distant ring about it. The feeling, at least for me, is of someone looking down from above. The word's original meaning of suffering together with someone has been partly lost. That's why I've opted for the word compassion. It's warmer, more intimate, and closer. It's taking part in the suffering of the other, being totally a fellow human being and suffering. Jesus is a revelation of God's unending, unconditioning love for us, human beings. And everything that Jesus has done, said, and undergone is meant to show us that the love we must long for is given to us by God. Not because we deserved it, but because God is a God of love. And Jesus said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that bears no fruit, he cuts away, and every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, to make it bear even more." John 15, verses 1 to 2. These words open a new perspective on suffering for me. Pruning helps trees to bear more fruit. Even when I bear fruit, even when I do things for God's kingdom, even when people express gratitude for coming to know Jesus through me, I need a lot more pruning, and many unnecessary branches and twigs prevent the vine from bearing all the fruit it can. They have to be clipped off. This is a painful process, and all the more so because I do not know that they are unnecessary. They often seem beautiful, charming, and very alive, but they need to be cut away so that more fruit can grow. It helps me to think about painful rejections, moments of loneliness, feeling of inner darkness and despair, and lack of support and human affection as God's pruning. I am aware that I might have settled those too soon for the few fruits that I can recognize in my life. I might say, well, I am doing some good here and there, and I should be grateful for and content with the little good I do. But that might be false modesty and even a form of spiritual laziness. God calls me to do more. God wants to prune me, and a pruned vine does not look beautiful, but during harvest time it produces much fruit. And the great challenge, is to continue to recognize God's pruning hands in my life. Then I can avoid resentment and depression and become even more grateful that I am called up to bear even more fruit than I thought I could. Suffering then becomes a way of purification and allows me to rejoice in its fruit with deep gratitude and without pride. And let me say this, suffering is not given by God. Sickness is not given by God, because God is our creator. We living in a fallen world, and we need to divide these thinking that God is the one who allowed it. When we're sick, when there is darkness, when we feel depressed, that is an emotional that is not okay in our human body, in our spiritual mind, thinking, and heart. And for some reason, God can help us when we give it all to God. And sometimes in these moments, our reflection can go deeper and we see what can be changed. And that's why pruning is necessary for that purification. God is not the one that punish. God is the one that asks respect, obedience, and love and glory to his name, because all comes from the hand of God. The good things. A father will not give stones for bread. And your pain is deep, and it won't just go away. It is also uniquely yours, because it is linked to some of your earliest life experiences. It can be. Your call is to bring that pain home. As long as your wounded part remains foreign to your adult self, your pain will injure you as well as others. Yes, you have to incorporate your pain into yourself and let it bear fruit in your heart and the hearts of others. That is what Jesus means when he asks you to take up your cross. He encourages you to recognize and embrace your unique suffering and to trust that your way to salvation lies therein. Taking up your cross means, first of all, befriending your wounds and letting them reveal to you your own truths. There is great pain and suffering in the world, but the pain hardest to bear is your own. Once you have taken up that cross, you will be able to see clearly the crosses that others have to bear, and you will be able to reveal to them their own ways to joy, peace, and freedom. The cross is broken. Let me that remind you. We go from victory to victory. That is the main course of our life. But in our lives, things happen. And we bear, as so many people say, everyone's house has his own cross. But we need to be very careful that we're not taking on ourselves the cross that Jesus bared, suffered and died, buried and rose. The work is finished. We deal with the way of a cross that recognizes our pain and our suffering, our struggle. But the cross is broken. We have one we can look at. Let our eyes be only on Jesus. He is the one, the only one. May God bless you and heal you and protect you and balm your soul. This is your Pastor Yeti. God bless.